Malgus was born with the name Viridun in 3700 BBY on Dromund Kaas, the heart of the reconstituted Sith Empire. Sith Emperor Vitiate had rebuilt the Sith on this planet that was steeped in the dark side after the Sith seemingly perished after their loss during the old Sith Wars. For hundreds of years, Vitiate had slowly rebuilt the Sith Order and was preparing for his conquest against the Republic. Viridun's parents gave him up for adoption right after birth, and he was raised by an adoptive father. His father worked as a biologist in the Imperial Science Bureau and managed a small zoo, where he kept and studied a wide array of exotic animals. From a young age, Viridun often spent time in the zoo of his father, caring for the animals and maintaining their cages. At the same time, as with most kids on Dromund Kaas, Viridun began training in the Force under various instructors. There, it quickly came out that he was incredibly gifted and had extraordinary potential in the Force. Hearing the praises from his teachers about his potential and the paths he could achieve in the Empire, the young Viridun shifted his mind towards this goal, joining the Empire as a Sith warrior. One day, while working in the zoo, one of their Twi'lek servants made a minor mistake. Viridun confronted her and killed her in cold blood, despite knowing fully well that the mistake was minor. He wanted to test for himself whether or not he had the willingness to kill someone in cold blood, a feat that was very necessary should he want to fulfill the potential that he had been promised. When his father learned of what Viridun had done, he was proud of his son. On Dromund Kaas, these types of feats were considered common. The strong shall rule over the weak, as was tradition in a Sith-led society. His father then reported the act to the Sith Academy on Dromund Kaas, deeming him ready to begin his proper training as a Sith warrior. On the last night before Viridun left for the Academy, his father took him for one last stroll through the zoo. There, he told Viridun that he truly enjoyed the animals because there was so much he could learn from them. As a first lesson, he led Viridun to the tank of a Kohun, an anthropod-type species. He then took a feeder rat and threw it into the tank. The Kohun immediately attacked it and killed the rat. Turning to Viridun, his father asked him why the Kohun would kill the rat despite just having been fed before and not being hungry. Viridun answered it was instinct. His father looked gleeful. Indeed, it was instinct. Animals were savages, and although savagery was useful, it could lead to someone becoming sloppy. Men, though, aren't savages. They control their bloodlust and only put it to use in order to achieve a greater goal. With this lesson in mind, they ventured to another exhibit. It was that of a Virsan, an avian that Viridun found particularly boring. The bird was feeding its offspring while they watched. Suddenly, though, the offspring jumped up and killed the Virsan mother. It turned out that the offspring the mother was feeding wasn't an offspring of hers, but rather a Minnow, a creature that looked very similar to an offspring of the Virsan. His father then told Viridun to trust no one, especially those who appear weak. That was the lesson of the Virsan bird. His father then led him to a cage with a tarp over it, which Viridun hadn't seen before. His father told him to remove the tarp, and Viridun did as told. The cage was empty. There was nothing there. Confused, he turned to his father, who just said that this was his final lesson. Viridun then realized what it meant. He had hoped there was something there beneath the cage, but had been deceived. It was just an empty cage. Hope and deception. That was the final lesson his father wanted to part him with. Heeding these lessons, Viridun departed for the Sith Academy the next morning. There, he quickly advanced in his training, becoming a Sith prodigy and powerful warrior. Eventually, the Sith pureblood Darth Vindican took him on as an apprentice. After being selected for that, Viridun dropped his birth name and took on his new identity as Malgus, a name he felt was more worthy of the Sith. On one of his missions to Geonosis, he discovered a Twi'lek slave girl who had been heavily mistreated by her owner, having bruises and wounds all over her body. Feeling bad for her, he killed her master and took her as his personal servant. The Twi'lek's name was Elena Daru. Although Malgus saw her as his slave, he eventually started to grow very fond of her, and they even became lovers. She gave Malgus a different part of life that he hadn't experienced up until that point. Still, he was a Sith warrior first and foremost, and couldn't let anyone know about his relationship with his servant. Alongside his master, he prepared the Sith's final steps toward the invasion of the Republic. For 1,000 years, the Sith were thought to be extinct, But soon they were to show themselves again. The day of their return was right upon them. In 3681 BBY, the Sith Empire was ready. Vitiate had been delayed for centuries by the efforts of the Jedi Master Revan, but still nothing could stop their eventual return to the known galaxy. Darth Vindican and Malgus were tasked with the honor to be among the first strike team with the target to recapture Korriban, the ancient homeworld of the Sith in the Outer Rim. The Sith fleet emerged from hyperspace and immediately engaged the Republic space station that was meant to guard the area. The Sith quickly overwhelmed the fleet protecting the station, and Darth Vindican and Malgus boarded one of their Sith Fury-class interceptor to board the station. They wanted to make a statement and make sure none on the station survived. Upon landing in the hangar bay, the two Sith were immediately confronted by two Jedi, Master Cal Sendarak and his Padawan, Satil Shan. Without any hesitation, the Sith engaged the two Jedi. This was the moment that Malgus had been training towards for his entire life. He engaged the Jedi Padawan while his master dealt with the Zabrak Jedi Master. Malgus quickly overwhelmed Satil with his brute strength, feeling his strength increasing with every blow of his lightsaber. But then he was taken off balance when Derek threw his lightsaber at him, allowing Satil to gain a footing and putting him on the defensive. As the battle raged, Malgus' master, Darth Vindican, launched a burst of Force lightning at Malgus' Jedi opponent. However, Jedi Master Cal Sendarak once again intervened, using the Force to strike Vindican and divert his attack. The Jedi Battle Master was a lot stronger than Malgus had expected. Vindican then turned his attention toward a nearby freighter belonging to a smuggler named Nico Okar. Okar was in the midst of trying to get the ship operational so that he and the Jedi could flee the battle. Meanwhile, a Republic trooper named Jace Malcolm defended the vessel, firing a rocket at Vindican to stall the Sith's assault. Vindican had no difficulty deflecting the rocket, but then heard Derek tell his Padawan to escape. The thought that the Jedi would even attempt doing something as cowardly as trying to escape this fight enraged Malgus. Infuriated by the prospect of letting their enemy slip away, Malgus joined Vindican in launching a coordinated attack on Derek. The Jedi Master, however, stood his ground and defended himself, wielding both his own lightsaber and Satil's saber staff. Even against both of them, Derek proved to be more than a match. Every one of their attacks was parried and deflected back at them. As the fight went on, Derek used the double-bladed lightsaber in a trick shot and stabbed Vindican through the chest, eliminating him from the fight. Malgus, who had been blasted away, looked at the scene before him in anger. His master had failed. Grabbing his master's lightsaber with the Force and completely in tune with his rage in the dark side, Malgus re-engaged the Jedi. As the Jedi hurled debris and fragments of metal at him using the Force, Malgus pushed forward relentlessly, swatting the wreckage aside. He disarmed Derek by knocking Shan's saber staff from his grip and pressed the advantage, breaking through the Jedi's defenses. His power had proven too much, and the fight had gone on for too long for Derek to keep putting up a fight. With a final stroke, Malgus sliced the tired Jedi across the chest, ending his life. He had won. Looking around, Malgus was surprised to see that Vindican was still alive. Instead of helping his former teacher, Malgus looked down on him with scorn. He ridiculed Vindican for his failure to stop the Jedi and the smuggler from escaping. Then, without hesitation, Malgus ended his master's life by decapitating him as the Sith fleet descended upon Korriban from orbit. His master had proven to be too weak to teach him anything else. Following the fight with the Jedi, Malgus descended to the surface of Korriban and wandered alone across the surface. During this solitary walk, he was struck by a Force vision, an image of the galaxy consumed by fire, the Republic and the Jedi Order in ruins. This vision cemented a conviction deep within him. He believed it was his destiny to bring about the destruction of the Republic and the downfall of the Jedi. After the victory on Korriban, the Sith forces kept increasing their influence in the Outer Rim. The conflict had expanded itself across the entire galaxy and would be known as the Great Galactic War. Malgus himself was part of several battles. 14 years later, in 3667 BBY, Malgus was promoted to a Sith Lord and could now carry the name of a Darth. Forth on, he was to be known as Darth Malgus. Upon his promotion, he was picked to lead an assault on Alderaan, a peaceful Republic planet right along the core worlds. A victory on a core world planet would definitely leave the Republic weakened and send the message to the galaxy that the Republic couldn't protect them, making systems further fall in place and surrender to the Sith. Malgus launched a surprise attack at the same time as the Sith drew away the Republic fleet from the core worlds. Unlike most Sith of this era, Malgus was unconventional in his leadership style. He regularly employed alien mercenaries, individuals the Empire typically considered untrustworthy and treacherous. His willingness to work with non-humans made him an outlier, and his dealings with such diverse species enabled him to learn many alien languages. For the assault, he recruited the Mandalorian mercenary Shae Vizsla, whose skill he respected a lot as she had done several jobs for him already, like assassinating a Republic senator. First, their fleet made an orbital bombardment to take out any anti-air turrets and defense systems. After that, Malgus landed thousands of Sith troops, war droids, and Sith warriors on the planet. Their objective was to capture the city and burn villages and such on the way to the ground to spread fear across the galaxy. On their way through a valley to get to the capital, they unexpectedly were ambushed by a Republic Special Forces squad led by Commander Jace Malcolm. Jace Malcolm was the same trooper that Malgus had encountered all these years ago when they first launched their attack on Korriban, who had escaped alongside the Jedi Padawan Satele Shan. Malcolm immediately started targeting Malgus, shooting his rocket launcher at him. Although Malgus managed to deflect these, he was forced to defect some into the ground, which scarred his face. However, to him, this was nothing. Pain only strengthens the dark side. He quickly subdued Malcolm and had 3 Sith prepare to execute him on the spot. But before the Sith warriors could act, Satele Shan, now a Jedi Knight, arrived and killed all 3 of them before engaging Malgus in a duel. She had grown a lot stronger since their last encounter, and Malgus was quickly forced on the back foot. But he quickly regained his footing and then started to counterattack. The scarring and the pain from his scarred face further fueling his attacks, making each strike feel like an attack from a beast. As their duel continued, Malgus managed to cut Satele's saber staff in half and prepared for the final blow. But it was caught by her just in time through her usage of tsunamis. Malgus pressed on, knowing fully well that she couldn't hold it up forever. Just when she was about to be overwhelmed, Jace Malcolm tackled Malgus and set off a grenade that sent both of them flying apart. This opened Malgus up to an attack. Shan quickly reacted and blasted him with a powerful force push first, before sending a second one that brought down the entire hill to crash down on him. Malgus had just lost his first duel in his life. With Malgus defeated, the remaining Sith forces were dealt with by arriving Republic reinforcements. The surprise attack on Alderaan was an absolute defeat for the Sith. Malgus, however, despite being heavily wounded, having his lungs contracted, his skin burnt and barely able to breathe, was still alive. The Sith forces and Shae Vizsla evacuated him and brought him on board his shuttle to bring him back to friendly space. The defeat haunting the Sith Lord. As Malgus saw the cityscapes growing smaller as his shuttle flew toward open space, his mind was still burning for revenge. He couldn't stand the taste of defeat and couldn't believe that the Sith had lost Alderaan. As they were about to exit the planet's atmosphere, he sensed the lone Jedi in an Alderaanian city. Determined to get his revenge, he ordered the shuttle to turn around. Amongst the debris of the broken city, he saw a lone Zatrak Jedi searching his way through the rubble. Malgus leapt from his shuttle and landed in behind the Jedi, calling out to him. The Zabrak quickly recognized who he was and pulled out 2 blue-bladed lightsabers. Although Malgus was still quite heavily injured and had trouble breathing, he was dead set on defeating his foe. He then charged at the Jedi, ready to lock his blades with him. But to his surprise, the Jedi brought down 2 buildings with the Force in an attempt to crush him. The attack nearly worked, and Malgus was yet again buried underneath a pile of rubble. But he had used the Force just in time to prevent himself from being crushed entirely. In that moment, he remembered the first lesson that his father taught him all these years ago. He had greatly underestimated his opponent and savagely wanted to get his revenge, losing all control over his state of mind due to his bloodlust and revenge. That was an animal's action, but he had been taught to use his savagery nature in a controlled fashion. With that, he controlled his emotions and in a burst of power, blew the rubble away from himself. Standing upright again, he re-engaged the Jedi who was at a loss for words. determined to end him but heeding the lesson to not underestimate him anymore. His newfound determination and focused power quickly overwhelmed the Jedi. As Malgus kept pushing, he could feel his opponent growing more and more desperate. But then he realized something else. The Jedi seemed to be luring him somewhere as he was leaving more and more space. Then he sensed it. There was a second Jedi present, and the Zabrak was trying to appear weak so to keep his focus on him. His father's second lesson came to his mind. Trust no one, no matter how weak they appear in the moment. With that, he used the Force to grab the second Jedi out of hiding and crushed his neck with the Force. The Zabrak, enraged, threw everything he had at Malgus, but Malgus parried his attacks. Finally, he channeled his body with Force lightning and unleashed it on the Zabrak. With that, the Jedi fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the attack. As Malgus saw the Jedi kneeling there, with a look of desperation and sadness on his face, Malgus remembered his third lesson from his father. He deactivated his lightsaber and looked the Jedi in the eyes. He could see the Jedi's hopes going up, seeing him, thinking that perhaps there was mercy from a Sith. Malgus stepped forward and reignited his lightsaber right in the Jedi's chest. Hope and deception. Sometimes there was just an empty cage. That was the final lesson his father had given him all those years ago. Satisfied at having stilled his bloodlust, Malgus joined the retreating Sith forces. Back on board his ship, his wounds were tended to by Elena, who had accompanied him on most battles. It gave him solace to see her this invested in trying to tend to him, and she slowly nursed him back to health. Despite Elena's care, the wounds Satele had inflicted upon him were severe. Henceforth, he had to wear a respirator which covered his neck, nose, and mouth to help him breathe properly again. The Battle of Alderaan had left him scarred for life. The Great Galactic War raged on, but neither side had a clear advantage up until this point. During the waning phases of the war, Darth Malgus spearheaded an aggressive campaign against the Republic Outer Rim worlds. As the battles started to amass themselves, Malgus decided to start documenting his actions in a personal journal. On the 129th day of the campaign, Malgus's forces launched an attack on the planet Orb-Radama. Accompanied by fellow Sith Lord Darth Minimal, Malgus led a direct assault on a Republic gun installation located at the foot of a cliff. They succeeded quite quickly and took control of the Republic stronghold. Over the following days, additional Sith troops arrived on Orb-Radama. Soon after, Malgus assembled his forces and delivered a speech to inspire them ahead of a major offensive targeting the capital of the planet. Malgus's army laid siege to the capital, aiming to break the city by starving its defenders and population. A week into the siege, Lord Adras, a political rival to Malgus, arrived on Orb-Radama. The Dark Council had dispatched him under the pretense of assisting Malgus. Infuriated by Adras's presence, Malgus begrudgingly tolerated his involvement. When Adras proposed using Mark I and Mark II Sith war droids to create a breach in the city's defenses, neither Malgus nor Venimal opposed the idea, though both had little faith in the droids' effectiveness. Acting on Adras's orders, the droids advanced on Livian Magnus's southern gate, only to be wiped out by the Republic's defenders. Although the assault failed, it did serve as a distraction. While the defenders were preoccupied fighting off the droids, Venimal and his commandos infiltrated the city and blew open a section of the wall. Malgus's forces flooded in and swiftly conquered the capital. Despite this success, Adras attempted to take full credit for the victory, despite his plan having failed. Malgus's disdain for him was at an all-time low at this point. Despite having captured the capital, the local population didn't fully comply to the Sith occupation. Furthermore, holding the planet became a bigger challenge for Malgus because for weeks they hadn't been resupplied. There was a danger that they'd soon be pushed off-world again should no reinforcements or supply run arrive. The problem was that the responsibility for military logistics lay with Minister Kamar of the Ministry of Logistics. But Malgus lacked the political leverage to pressure her into providing support. He also sent multiple requests to War Minister Sheris, which went unanswered. With no aid forthcoming, the Republic launched a counterattack, deploying a fleet of Hammerhead-class cruisers to strike at Malgus's orbiting ships. From the balcony of a palace in Livian Magnus, Malgus watched the Republic fleet engage his own. Realizing the situation was dire, he boarded his personal shuttle and ascended to the dreadnought to oversee the battle personally. but by the time he reached the bridge, the battle was already lost. Malgus could only watch as a crippled Harrower-class dreadnought descended uncontrollably into Ord Radama's atmosphere and crashed into the heart of the capital city. Through the Force, Malgus experienced the simultaneous deaths of Darth Venamal and over 100,000 civilians. Overcome with rage and grief, he unleashed a deafening Force scream. The power of his scream warped the Lindworm's bridge viewport, ruptured the eardrums of his crew, and annihilated a formation of Republic Aurek-class strike fighters flying past the ship. Seeing no path to victory, Malgus ordered a full withdrawal from Ord Radama, commanding his remaining forces to retreat deep into the core of Sith-controlled space. Following their retreat, Malgus's forces were relentlessly pursued by the Republic. The Jedi commander Ven Zalo wanted to make sure that Malgus, who was responsible for all the death on Ord Radama, would be brought to justice. They followed him all the way to the Sith world of Ziost. Despite Malgus's best efforts, they were unable to stop the Republic from advancing. The Republic, confident in their advance, then launched an offensive against the planet Ashas Ree. Malgus was deployed to reinforce the defense and, upon arrival, took command of a line of siege tanks. Under his leadership, the Sith repelled multiple assaults by the Republic armored unit before finally emerging victorious. Despite the heavy toll, they stopped the Republic advance on Sith territory. In recognition of Malgus's instrumental role in the defense, the Dark Council assured him that he would never again face a supply crisis like the one he endured at Ord Radama. After his victory on Ashas Ree, Malgus was informed that the Jedi commander Ven Zalo had retreated to Sereno. As Ven Zalo was one of the highest-ranking and most powerful Jedi Masters of his time, Malgus wanted to kill him to firstly disrupt the Republic command structure, and secondly get revenge on the Jedi that had almost beat him at Ashas Ree. Malgus laid siege to Sereno and quickly captured the world. However, Ven Zalo managed to escape back to Coruscant. Despite that, his victories rose his standing within the Sith Order. However, with that, the spotlight on him also increased, and rumors began to circulate within the Empire suggesting that Malgus bore responsibility for the death of Lord Venamal and the catastrophic defeat on Ord Radama. Still, the Sith Emperor wanted Ord Radama to be retaken, and Malgus was tasked to redeem himself and see it as an opportunity to erase the stain on his honor. Malgus, determined to succeed, personally led a regiment of Sith warriors in an assault on New Raido, the new capital of Ord Radama. His forces were then to follow once him and the Sith warriors had breached the city's outer defenses. The fighting dragged on for weeks as Jedi resistance proved stronger than anticipated. Malgus faced several setbacks, but he took grim satisfaction in the brutality of the conflict, even as the campaign's slow progress began to erode his standing with the Dark Council. Despite these challenges, Malgus remained confident in his impending victory. Weeks later, his forces finally managed to take control of Ord Radama and secure it completely for the Sith. With Ord Radama taken, the Dark Council turned their focus towards a bigger target, an assault on the Republic capital, Coruscant. Due to his victory on Ord Radama, Malgus was chosen to be part of the assault on the capital. He was informed of the Dark Council's plans that he should start assembling forces to begin a wider offensive on the Republic core worlds, and was given a formidable fleet for the battles to come. For Malgus, this was what he had been striving toward. He was certain that he'd be instrumental in destroying the Republic. In 3653 BBY, 28 years after the start of the war, the Dark Council reached out to the Republic Senate with an offer to negotiate peace. As delegations from the Sith Empire, the Republic, and the Jedi Order prepared for a summit on Alderaan to formalize a treaty, the Sith finalized the last details of their surprise attack on Coruscant. Darth Angral was appointed to lead the overall operation. Darth Malgus, meanwhile, was entrusted with initiating the assault by striking the Jedi Temple. Malgus welcomed this role eagerly in the knowledge that the Empire would follow the attack with a full-scale bombardment that would obliterate Coruscant. To him, this was the realization of the vision he had received years earlier on Korriban, one where he saw himself as the destroyer of the Republic. For his part of the plan, Malgus was required to directly engage against the Jedi inside the temple to destroy the planet's main defense grid that was located in the temple itself. A strike team of 50 Sith warriors were picked to accompany him. Alongside the Sith warriors, Malgus once again recruited Shae Vizsla to help him, wanting her to infiltrate the temple and make sure that the defense grid would be destroyed before the arrival of their strike team. Although Malgus wanted to lead this preliminary strike without assistance, Darth Angral insisted that Lord Adras, Angral's political ally, serve as second-in-command and take charge of the infiltration team. Despite his dislike for Adras, Malgus had no choice but to accept the arrangement. In the months leading up to the attack, Malgus and his team prepared obsessively. He personally reviewed digital simulations of the battle thousands of times to refine every detail. When the peace negotiations commenced on Alderaan, the Sith's trap was sprung. Their opening had come. Malgus, accompanied by Alina, arrived on Coruscant. The two walked through Coruscant's bustling plazas unnoticed among the citizens. As they slowly made their way towards the Jedi Temple, Alina asked them about their future together and that she wasn't happy about the prospect of fighting and being in battles with him constantly. She wanted to find a place to settle down and live out their lives together. Malgus, though, rebutted once again what she had heard countless times already, that his duties were toward the Sith Empire and that they couldn't be equal. He'd always be her master, and she was to stay his servant. She rebutted that Malgus didn't treat her like just any servant, though, and she knew that he loved her. Malgus coldly replied that she was a mere servant to him. Alina didn't let loose, though, and rebutted once again, claiming that underneath all this talk about evolution, perfection, and conflict, he didn't actually feel and believe these words. This made Malgus stop in his tracks and turn towards her. Without saying another word, he passionately kissed her, and then they both smiled at each other. They knew fully well that this might be their last moment together. Shortly afterwards, Malgus received confirmation from Shae Vizsla that the Republic's defensive grid had been taken offline by her, and that the way was clear for the Sith invasion. Alongside Alina, Malgus walked up the stairs toward the temple's main entrance. As a squad of Jedi Temple security guards tried to intercept them, Malgus quickly dispatched them. Inside the temple, 6 Jedi Knights dropped from the balconies to confront the intruders. Jedi Master Venzalo, the commander who was responsible for defeating Malgus's forces on different occasions, previously joined them. Together, the 7 Jedi stepped forward to meet Malgus and Alina. As Malgus kept walking toward the Jedi, the chrono on Malgus's wrist began to beep, signaling that a hijacked NR-2 Republic dropship was nearing the temple. The sound startled the Jedi, prompting them to ignite their lightsabers and brace themselves. Zalo, however, remained calm, holding his ground. Malgus, recognizing his composure, nodded in respect. Moments later, the dropship burst through the temple's entrance, skidding across the floor, ripping apart columns, collapsing balconies in its path. As debris settled, the ship's hatch blew open. Lord Adras emerged, followed by the 50 Sith warriors, all of whom ignited their lightsabers. Malgus smiled. This was the moment his vision had foretold. He activated his own weapon, and with Vizsla, Alina, and the others, charged into battle. Zalo and his Jedi leapt back nearly 20 meters, joining other Jedi defenders. Adras and the Sith warriors charged them, and a massive battle ensued. In the chaos, Malgus quickly killed several Republic soldiers and cut down several Jedi, each kill fueling his bloodlust. He then noticed a Zabrak female Jedi attempting to attack Alina. Knowing she didn't stand a chance, Malgus quickly intervened, extending his hand and pushed the Jedi into a stone column with the Force, killing her instantly. As the battle intensified, Adras leapt into a cluster of Republic troops and unleashed a powerful blast of Force energy, scattering the soldiers like leagues. Malgus followed with a devastating burst of Force lightning that engulfed 2 Padawans and a Jedi Knight, killing them and leaving their bodies charred. After these displays of power, Malgus and Adras exchanged a mocking salute. As the battle went on, the momentum seemed to shift in the Sith's favor. Malgus then saw Zalo in the midst of the battlefield, gleeful to get a chance of killing his foe. As he was engaged by 3 Jedis who tried to stop his advance, he dealt with all of them with ease. Fully consumed by the dark side, feeling it strengthening him, Malgus locked eyes with Zalo, the opponent he had truly been seeking. Zalo, in turn, demonstrated his own skill, cutting down 2 Sith warriors. Lord Adras then attempted to flank him, but Zalo quickly pushed him across the hall with a forced push. Malgus then charged. Both Zalo and Alina noticed the movement. Daru opened fire to cover Malgus's advance. Without glancing her way, Zalo deflected the shots with his lightsaber, redirecting 2 bolts right into Alina's chest before blasting her into a pillar with a force push. Malgus froze, staring at Alina's limp body on the floor. The sight ignited a fury unlike anything he had ever felt. Releasing his rage in an uncontrolled scream, he shattered a nearby column. Shards of stone cascaded across the battlefield as he redirected his hate towards Zalo. Another Jedi tried to intercept him, but Malgus casually reached out with the Force, crushed the defender's windpipe, and tossed the body aside as he charged. Zalo met him head-on, and a duel ensued between the 2 most powerful combatants on the battlefield. Zalo was incredibly fast, unleashing a wild flurry of saber strikes, unlike any opponent Malgus had encountered up until now. Malgus parried skillfully, but was put on the defensive quite quickly. Zalo soon landed a hard blow to Malgus's jaw with the hilt of his saber. Seizing the opening, Zalo lunged for Malgus's throat. But Malgus anticipated the move. He brought his saber vertical, blocked the strike, and spun free of the bind. Reversing his weapon during the spin, he plunged the blade into Zalo's abdomen. Zalo froze, impaled on Malgus's lightsaber, his eyes full of pain and disbelief. In them, Malgus saw the reflection of the burning Jedi Temple and the silhouette of Imperial ships descending upon Coruscant. The fall of Zalo was the symbol of the fall of the Republic in Malgus's eyes, and he couldn't have been more gleeful to have personally killed a foe as powerful as Zalo himself. Meanwhile, on the outsides of the Jedi Temple, the sacking of Coruscant had begun in full force. While Darth Angral and his forces took control of the Republic's Senate building and executed Supreme Chancellor Baruchan, the Sith Armada above the planet initiated a devastating orbital bombardment, destroying countless buildings on Coruscant, setting fire to the Republic capital. Back in the Jedi Temple, now lying in ruins, Malgus stood amid the wreckage, soaking in the moment. He commended the Sith warriors who had survived the battle, then turned his focus to Alina. She was mortally wounded, but still alive from Zalo's attack. Malgus then ordered Adras to summon a medical team from the Imperial medical transport Steadfast. Standing at the shattered entrance of the temple, Malgus watched the Empire's bombers rain destruction upon the surface of Coruscant. From there, he opened a communication channel to Darth Angral aboard the Darkness, briefing him on the temple's fall. When the medics arrived, Malgus ordered them to begin treating the wounded and giving priority towards Alina. Though she initially protested being taken away from his side, Malgus convinced her to go with the medical team to the Steadfast, promising to follow once his task on Coruscant was complete. Shortly afterward, Adras returned and questioned what would become of the bodies of the fallen Jedi. Malgus, who held a grudging respect for their bravery, decided that the temple would serve as their tomb. He used the explosives remaining in the hijacked dropship to demolish the ancient structure. He and the other Sith stood 20 meters away, silently observing the temple one final time. Then, Malgus triggered the detonator. The ancient symbol of the Jedi Order crumbled as the building imploded, sending stone and metal flying in every direction. The Sith warriors formed the barrier of Force energy to protect themselves as they cheered. The Jedi Temple was reduced to rubble, and the Sith had laid waste to the capital of the Republic.